Hello and welcome to video lecture series in political science. Today we are going to discuss chapter 4 titled as Alternative Centers of Power from your textbook Contemporary World Politics. As you know that for understanding we have divided this chapter into 6 parts. So far we have discussed about the European Union, the ASEAN and China as important alternative centers of power. We have discussed about their history, economy, polity and various other dimensions and how these alternative centers of power are gradually attracting attention of the entire world. We have also discussed about rise of China in global economic and world order. Today we will discuss about the rise of India and India's relationship with these powers, the 3 powers that we have discussed so far. Now let us begin with India as an emerging power. India in the last few years is seen as an emerging power on the world stage. India is attracting the attention of the world in recent years. It is an emerging economy, an innovator in the field of science and technology and an important power in South Asia. India is also becoming an important and influential actor in global politics. India's resurgence as a significant global power, its assertion of identity in the world politics, its ability to contribute to the world economy and international peace and security together have brought India into the limelight. Now, 65% of India's population is under the age of 35. So, India is rich in human and natural resources and intellectual capacity. India is one of the most attractive emerging destinations for foreign direct investment or FDI. As you know that professionals from India are making their mark felt in various fields all over the world, particularly science and technology and software engineering. India is world's largest functioning democracy, very successful. India has followed pluralistic political ideologies. India is multicultural society, not just in theory, but in practice as well. And as you know that diversity in India is in fact immeasurable. We just cannot measure the kind of diversity that India exhibits. India has nurtured a pluralistic society very successfully. It has been able to bring people of different religions, ethnic, linguistic, cultural and social background together under one umbrella in the Union. You know, at one point of time after independence, it was thought that the democracy in India will not succeed or it will not be successful because India is too diverse. How will it take care of the interest of the wide variety of people? But India has shown that democracy and development are not either or choices. That is a zero-sum game. If this happens, this will not happen. But democracy and development are processes that go hand in hand and can actually supplement each other. India has emerged as one of the top 10 economies of the world with maintaining a consistent 7 to 8% of growth rate in the past decade. India is also one of the major advocates and an important player in negotiating some of the global issues such as terrorism, climate change, energy security, global security issues, particularly establishment of peace and democracy and control of production of nuclear weapons. And India has also been able to exert influence in the world politics on matters of international concern pertaining to these issues only. India has also taken a strong position on matters that are important to India without succumbing to international pressures. India has also established strategic relationships with major powers in the world, particularly the US, the European Union, China, Russia and Japan. Very interestingly, the judiciary, media, civil society is free and very active in India because India espouses freedom of speech and expression as a fundamental right, and it comes as a fundamental right which is given to each and every citizen in the country. India has a vibrant culture, its food, dress pattern, art, literature, entertainment, particularly Bollywood, is becoming internationally known. But there are certain social and economic challenges that India needs to address before it becomes a full-fledged emerging or emerged power. What are these challenges? These challenges are removal of poverty, socio-economic transformation of different sections of society, in an equitable and inclusive manner. And these are the few of the important challenges that we need to address before we can claim that we are a global power. Now, let us discuss relationship between India and the other three alternative centers of power that we have discussed in this chapter, that is India, China, India EU and India ASEAN. Let us begin with our neighbor only, India and China's relationships. Both India and China were great powers. They were full of rich history, culture and traditions. Both India and China have been very influential over their neighbors in the respective regions before they were taken over as colonies by the imperial power during the initial stages of the 20th and 19th century. Their influence was political, economic and cultural. Silk route and spice route are examples of this contact and influence that China and India had in the past. Both of them operated without crossing each other, interestingly. The areas of influence never overlapped. They operated independent of each other. There was limited political, economic or cultural interaction between the two nations. So, what happened when in the 20th century they confronted each other, they interacted for the first time openly with each other, there were some difficulties in evolving a foreign policy to deal with each other because they had never done it in the past. After both India and China gained independence, it was expected that these powers from Asia will come together and they will guide the future direction of the developing world or the developing countries. For a while, the slogan Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai also was seen as start of an era of relationship between the two nations. But differences between India and China started to come up after Chinese takeover of Tibet in 1950, and there were also conflict over the border between India and China. Now, as you can see in the map, the green line is the line of actual control and the red line is the disputed territories between India and China. Now, if we take a look at this map once again, there are controversies or conflicts over territory in the western sector along a border of 1570 kilometers, in the central sector which are smaller areas as compared to western and eastern sector, and on Arunachal Pradesh which is defined by the McMahon line, that is the eastern sector. Soon this conflict over the border between the two countries ended into a military war happening in 1962. The conflict happened because of the claim of territory in Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin in the Ladakh region and some of the areas in close to Uttaranchal, now Uttaranchal and Himachal Pradesh. India suffered heavy losses in the war. China also had large number of casualties. The war resulted in a long-term uneasy and strained relationship between India and China. In fact, the diplomatic relations between the two countries were strained, almost stopped after the war until the middle of the 1970s, when there was a change in the leadership in China after the death of Mao. In this picture, you can see the good times when Zhou Enlai and Jawaharlal Nehru came together and the slogan Bhai Bhai came during that era. These are some of the pictures where you can see Indian troops are engaged in war with China. After the 1980s, China's economic and foreign policy became more pragmatic and less ideological, which means they became more practical and wanted to integrate with the world rather than remain stuck to the ideology. China started to make move towards the countries with which it had earlier cut off or had strained relationships, like the US is one of the examples. Since 1980s, India and China have also attempted to resolve or solve the border dispute through diplomatic negotiations, but a solution has not been reached as yet, although the talks are going on. But 1990s saw a new era in the relationship between India and China. After liberalization, India opened up and established economic relationships with China. Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, also visited China in 1988. This visit gave boost to the mutual relationships between the two countries. Both the governments on both the sides have attempted to avoid any direct conflict and maintain peace on the border. There have been exchanges in the field of culture, science and technology and cooperation, and both have opened up 4 border posts for mutual trade. Bilateral trade between India and China has reached 73 billion US dollar in 2011, making China India's largest trading partner, and it is estimated to reach $100 billion mark by year 2015. Both the countries, China and India, have adopted similar positions in international bodies like WTO. Both of them are part of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Although there have been some elements of strain between the two, like when India did a nuclear test in 1998 and China is seemed to be helping Pakistan in development of its nuclear program. But both India and China have avoided any direct confrontation in the wake of strong economic relationships that are emerging, and they will benefit both the countries. Along with that, China's relations and military presence in Bangladesh and Myanmar is also viewed as hostile to India's security and interest in South Asia. But despite all these tensions between the two, at one level, the talks are going on between the two without any interruption. And interestingly, military cooperation is also increasing between the two. Increasing transportation and communication links, common economic interest and similar positions on global concerns are likely to establish more positive and lasting relationship between the two emerging powers in the world in future. Now, let us discuss the relationship between India and the European Union. The relationship between the two goes back to the early 1960s. The joint political statement of 1993 and the 1994 cooperation agreement between the two is the current legislative framework for cooperation, which has opened the doors for broad political dialogue between India and EU. This dialogue between India and EU is carried out through annual summits which happen on yearly basis between the two. There are regular ministerial and expert level meetings happening between the India and EU. In 2004, India became one of the EU's strategic partner, and since 2005, the Joint Action Plan, which was revised in 2008, 3 years later, is helping to realize the full potential of the partnership between these two entities in key areas of interest which are common to both. The current efforts of partnership are centered around developing cooperation in the field of security in the light of the global terrorism. There are negotiations going on for free trade agreement, and there is an also attempt to implement the Joint Action Plan on Climate Change, which was adopted at a summit in 2008. Now, some of the key points of India-EU relationships are, let us look at them. The first important point is that India is an emerging global economic power. The country combines a sizable and growing market of more than 1 billion people. EU is interested in this market. The EU is India's largest trading partner, accounting for 20% of Indian trade. The value of EU-India trade grew from 28.6 billion euros, not the dollar, billion euro in 2003 to 72.7 billion euro in 2013. EU investment stock in India also grew substantially, reaching 41.8 billion euro in the year 2012. Trade in the commercial services is also growing many a times, and it has grown in the past decade. It has moved from 5.2 billion euro in 2002 to 22.5 billion euro in one decade, that is 2012. The India and EU are both committed to further increase trade in both goods and services. They are also working in the direction of bilateral investment through trade and in science and technology sphere. The 2012 substantial progress was made in free trade agreement negotiations between the two countries. The focal issues between the two include market access for goods and services and achieving a meaningful chapter on government procurement and sustainable development, among other agendas. Apart from trade, the India-EU strategic partnership also looks into the areas of cooperation. These areas of cooperation include security, in particular countering terrorism. Another area is cyber security, counter piracy, and they are also working in the field of energy, research, innovation and development. A memorandum of understanding has been signed on all these issues between India and EU. There is a need to further support social sectors like health and education, in particular secondary education or higher education and vocational training among the two. For year 2011 to 13, the EU intends to fund fellowships for Indian students and professors under the name Erasmus Mundus Fellowships or Scholarships. And they are also investing in the projects in the field of energy, environment and technical assistance. Now, let us look at the relationship between India and ASEAN. The India-ASEAN relationship has entered its third decade now. India became a sectoral partner of ASEAN in 1992, a dialogue partner in 1996 and a summit level partner in 2002. The last 2 decades of India-ASEAN dialogue has led to deepening of cooperation across the 3 pillars, that is political, military, economic and socio-cultural pillars. You remember these are the 3 pillars of ASEAN community, and India is entering into partnership in all these 3 areas. The India-ASEAN dialogue currently has 26 intergovernmental mechanisms that cover a wide spectrum of areas. India has been in fact a source of strength for most ASEAN countries for its unequivocal stand on maritime dispute. India supports ASEAN country on these disputes. India supports unimpeded rights of passage and other maritime rights in accordance with the international law. So, whenever there is a breach of law, India supports ASEAN countries. In the past few years, India has signed some major agreements with the ASEAN. These agreements are likely to increase trade between India and ASEAN. In 2011 and 12, the total India-ASEAN trade increased by 37%. It reached to 79.3 billion $, surpassing the trade target of 70 billion $, by 2012. The target is to achieve trade worth 100 billion $, by the end of year 2015 and 200 billion by the end of year 2022. But this trade is still less as compared to the ASEAN-China trade. Way back in 2005, the China-ASEAN trade was 100 billion $, and it now exceeds 400 billion $. So, we have a great distance to cover. Another area of focus between India and ASEAN is improving land, sea and air connectivity. From Indian side, New Delhi has started the annual ASEAN Connectivity Coordinating Committee, which is looking into the matter of developing these connectivities. Yet another important area is that India is supporting the ASEAN community, which is supposed to take shape by 2015, and a drug-free ASEAN region by again the year 2015. India and ASEAN hold regular people-to-people exchanges. They also exchange students, diplomats, professional, media and other strategic committees. The EU, ASEAN, China and India are emerging power. They have strong relationships with each other. So, what are these relationships indicating or indicative of? Do they indicate that the center of global power is shifting and it is shifting towards the east? Because ASEAN, China and India are all, ये यहाँ आप मैप दिखा देना एक बार प्लीज, ठीक है, आप मैप दिखा देना. Do they indicate that the center of global power is shifting, and is it shifting towards the east? We need to look at the situation because ASEAN, China and India are located on the eastern side of the world map. In a unipolar world dominated by the US, the new and emerging centers of power can change the global power equations and dynamics. The strength of these alternative centers of power lies in their economic capacity, in their human resources and their agenda for peace and development. They are also making efforts to bring out cooperation between different nations, fight for equality and human rights. So, do we see these centers challenging the US hegemony that we studied in the previous chapter? The time and the future only will establish that. To conclude, let us summarize this chapter. In this chapter, we discussed about the emerging alternative centers of power. We discussed about the European Union, the ASEAN, China and India. We discussed about the rise of these powers, their structures, the functioning, their economic and political strength. We also discussed about their path to progress and the relationship between these powers and the relationship of each of this power with India. We also discussed about the areas where they are cooperating with each other and some of the areas where there are conflict. We discussed about all these powers together and how they can challenge the US hegemony. So, this is in brief about the alternative centers of power, those which can individually or collectively challenge the US hegemony. Enjoy reading this chapter. Thank you.